Again, Mr. Satish Pradhan, Chief Group HR, Tata Sons, heads the Tata Group HR function. He has a master's in history from Delhi University and has worked in public and private sector companies. During the last 30 years, he has worked with the Steel Authority of India, CMC, ICI India, Brookbone Lipton India, now Unilever India, ICI PLC in various capacities in the HR area. He's on the boards of various Tata Group companies, professional bodies, NGOs, and chartered fellow of CIPD. I request Mr. Pradhan to address the gathering here with us today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my dear friend Bala, and students. It's absolutely an honor to be here. This is something that I've been promising Professor Bala for a long time, and he's finally given me the opportunity to physically be here after many years of committing and being in default of being here. So it's a very great moment for me to be here with you. It's also a great honor. I came here expecting to hear some of my distinguished colleagues in the panel and our ex-president Dr. Abdul Kalam to start with, and I find myself in the dubious honor of having to start the proceedings today. But it is an honor all the same, and I shall endeavor to do my own poor substitute for speaking first. The theme that we've been talking about for this whole event has been the triple bottom line and passion. It is a subject that I feel very passionately about, and fortunately I work for a group in which that passion not only has legitimacy, it has respect and is invited as a very essential part of what we all bring to the table in the Tata Group. Today, planet, people, profit are not options. They're not nice to have. They are imperatives. I say this with a degree of perhaps overzealousness on the eyes of many people, and perhaps in an understated way in the eyes of many people. But I do think that this is something which is fundamental and seminal to the way that organizations need to be addressing what we do, particularly in the corporate environment. That we have been remiss as a society, as economies, as governments, as citizens, in the past, in our pursuit of taking what we want from wherever it is available, making what we want in the best possible way that we thought was profitable, convenient, or appropriate, and wasting what we thought we could afford to waste, is not an acceptable way of living for any of us today, and especially not as citizens. And all of us as citizens are part of a society, are part of communities, are part of organizations, as much as we are individuals. And we need to bring that perspective into play. Triple bottom line, much talked about. Somebody reported a Google research which said that in the past X months, there have been 20 million hits on the phrase triple bottom line. So is this really something which people are serious about? Is this something that you and I need to believe is important, or is it just a fad? The whole notion of bottom line has a kind of accounting Wall Street, with due deference to my old friend and dear colleague Sundar, who's got a certain financial background. I have no disrespect for financials. I have no disrespect for bottom lines. But I don't think everything can be reduced to a bottom line or a top line. I don't think that's the way we can measure our need to live our commitment to an inclusive society, our need to conserve and sustain the environment that has brought us out. I think there have to be other ways of doing this. And it cannot be, with due respect, Wall Street driven or bottom line driven in that sense. Yes, it must reflect there, but not be driven by that. It also has an element of actually our soul searching ourselves. And I don't say this from any high moral ground, and I don't say this from any apologetic tone. I'm saying this very honestly to myself and to all of us, and to all the organizations that we represent. Is there a difference between our wanting to look good and our being good? And do we have that inner reflectiveness which will help us when we necessarily must introspect at every stage about the difference between these two? To me, that is non-negotiable. And to me, that stems from a fundamental belief structure. A fundamental belief structure which a lot of my dear friends and the custodians of the future of mankind, the young students here, need to be deeply imbued with as they walk into their lives as leaders and professional choice makers. And that belief structure is about the nature of society and its inclusiveness. The belief that we, in whatever we do, in whatever role we play, have an impact on that, contribute or detract from it. Are we diminishers or multipliers of inclusiveness? Are we diminishers or multipliers of the environment? And are we diminishers or multipliers of the profitability and the sustainability of the businesses that we represent? Not as separate silos, not as separate buckets, but as a three-dimensional view of the world, which necessarily has to be inclusive of these three views and not an either-or view of the trade-offs that are involved in between them. So it is not about community development or social empowerment at the cost of profit. It is not about economic development at the cost of environment. It is not about conservation of species at the cost of profit. It is about and also. And that is a belief structure that needs, for us, all of us, to be absorbed at a level perhaps where I feel I need to do more than I have done till now in deepening that belief structure in myself. So when we talk about sustainability, the first thought that comes to my mind is, what is the time horizon in which we think? Because to me, that is the fundamental indicator of our sensitivity to the consequences and the impact that we have on society, on environment, on the sustainability of our businesses. Leadership necessarily and citizenship necessarily must think beyond tomorrow, the day after, into a slightly more long-term. What will the generation succeeding us inherit as sustainable businesses, as sustained environment, as viable societies? So what values do we represent individually and in our organizations? Do we really ask the question, what do we stand for? Or is it really a no-brainer saying, well, we got to make money. If you don't make money, you're not there. Of course that's true. But is that all that you're there for? And I never tire of quoting our founder, who said at a time when it was hardly fashionable, and certainly not commonly held as a belief, the following words. He said in the 1860s, the community is not merely one of the stakeholders for us. It is the very purpose of our existence. If that is a belief that was set out as a clarion call, how well have we lived up to that clarion call? Are we living that today? Are we doing things today which live up to that? There is always scope for doing things better. Are we conscious and sensitive to that? Let me paint another picture. We may have nothing to do with sections of society across the world which are today excluded, the so-called disenfranchised. We are not going to be able to build islands of prosperity and well-being amidst large oceans of social exclusion, economic deprivation, and disenfranchisement. In a very ominous way, it's been said that today's affluent, today's successful, today's comfortable people should beware of the wrath of the disenfranchised. And I'm not trying to be a scaremonger or anything. I'm saying, is this the nature of reality that we understand? So do our values, our vision, our strategy for any organization include questions like, what will this do to the environment? What will this do to the communities we are part of? It's very easy to think of communities as employees, immediate communities like customers, and most progressive organizations, when we look around, are beginning to engage with that agenda. Employees, customers, suppliers, people involved in the immediate vicinity. But the context in which our manufacturing environments sit, the cities in which we do business, the towns in which we operate, there are communities there. And I'm not saying we should run a completely charitable institution that is totally dedicated to philanthropy, which is another extreme. But there is a balance between taking that responsibility and doing something about it when we conceive strategy. I don't know how many institutions that teach strategy today actually factor in considerations where these questions are asked. But I do know that some boards do ask this question. And I'm delighted they do so, because that sets the direction for us to be able to make progress in this way. Measurement and metrics. We are all great for measurement and metrics. And I think personally, the GRI format is a fantastic format, because it allows for detailed reporting. It allows for granularity in testing the delta between our intentions and our impact. We may have the best of intentions. We may speak passionately in such fora about what we want to do. At the end of the day, did it make a difference? Is effort alone enough, or is there an impact that we need to look at? One of the things that some of the Tata Group companies have developed, and through our Tata Community Initiatives group we've developed, is what we call a Human Development Index, which actually measures what is the impact that your organization had on human development in the environment that it operates, which is a composite set of indicators, and helps you track progress to really be able to say our intent is converting into impact. The other thing that I think is an extremely important, for me, very valuable and important indicator is the kind of questions that the board or the leadership of a company or an organization asks. Let me give you an example from the Tata Group. Why was it, and here I must pay tribute to one of the people who's really helped this country and this world think about this in a very different way, and that is my dear friend, the late Professor C.K. Prahlad. The kind of questions he raised, the kind of frameworks he put forward, helped us think of communities, society, and business in a very, very different way from what we had been thinking of. He helped us in many ways. One of the things that was an interesting outcome was when the Tata Group said that we will create a hotel hospitality infrastructure with a room that costs 1,000 rupees. Why 1,000 rupees? Another question, why can't we create a car which costs 1 lakh? Third question, why can't we have affordable water purification, which has resulted in Swachh? And there are lots of people are very unhappy about the fact that it still costs some 600-700 rupees. What do these questions at the senior-most levels of the organization message into the organization to say, why are we doing this? And it's not a question of, so how much money will you make if you sell it at 1,000 rupees? You better find ways of making money, because the affordability for the people you want to serve is at 1,000. Is this kind of questioning in our own organization as prevalent as it was in these few instances that we're talking about? And the more we see that, the more encouraged we feel that our intent is translating into impact. I do wish to take a bit of a moment on my favorite subject, which is the environment. And I'll give you an example. Many decades ago, and my dear friend Firdaus, who spent more time in the Tata Group than I have in my entire working life, will stand witness to this. We inherited many properties, we acquired many properties, and one particular one was the Tata Motors land in Pune, in Pimpri Chinchwad, which was some 40-50 acres of barren, waste scrubland. Today, that property not only houses the manufacturing facilities of Tata Motors, it has 1,57,000 full-grown trees planted during this time by Tata Motors. It has 3 water bodies which are part of the water recycling of the plant. It does not draw water from local resources. And there is a breeding site at Lake House which is now recognized by environmentalists like BNHS as an outstanding example of repopulating species that have not been in that part of the country for quite some time. For 4 years, I have personally photographed and recorded painted storks breeding at that site in numbers from 50 to 100. This doesn't happen by accident. The kind of indigenous species that have been propagated there. These are examples of being conscious about doing something about the environment within the framework of what you're addressing. I would therefore say, in summary, there are lots of examples of good work, and yet there are enough reasons for us not to feel satisfied. I personally want to pledge that this is one occasion where I will renew my commitment to do more, to think deeper, and to try and deepen the impact of what I and people I associate with will do more of in this area. Thank you all very much. It's been an honor to be here with you.